Have you ever watched a team member or an employee treat your company goals like they were on vacation, clocking in, doing the bare minimum, then clocking out? What if instead you could hire people that treat every challenge like it was their own business? In this episode, I'm going to share some questions that you can ask in your next interview that will instantly reveal if somebody thinks like an owner and how making this one shift in your hiring strategy can create nonstop innovation. Stick with me. What are you asking for? What are you really, asking for, but what do you need? One of my main goals of a leader is to develop critical thinkers. I just don't want doers. I don't want somebody that I can hand a checklist to and then they follow the checklist. I want somebody to come in and problem solve. Ownership is not just a buzzword. It is a behavioral characteristic. What can you do to assess that ownership trait? It's behavioral. Gary Vee talks about this. You hire fast and fire faster. Hey everyone, John here. Today we're going to talk about how to hire people that bring this sense of ownership to your organization. Hiring can be the most costly and time-consuming part of any business owner, of any leader's time. When people leave, that's a cost to the organization. And when we go out, and whether it's a solicitation of a job or we're looking to a recruiting agency, it's important for us to ask the right questions during the interview. And even before that, it's important for us to post the right job description. So we're going to talk about all those things today, and I'm going to give you some applications like I always do. Get out your journals. This is an active listening podcast. You're not going to want to ignore any of these tips because they are gold. I've worked with a lot of business owners and these things work. So let's get into the first one. We're going to talk about redefining your hiring mindset. And just a quick story here. When I first started a business, when I was a leader and, I had to go hire somebody, I always thought that I needed the smartest person out of the group, whether that was education or the most experience. What I found out was that didn't necessarily equate to an ownership mindset, somebody who would come onto the company, hire in, onboard, and then treat it as it was their own company, as if it were their own team. As one thing that was very evident, I might have gotten the smartest person in the most experienced, but they may have already been set in their ways. They have already had a plan, or maybe they were a stepping stone, or I was a stepping stone in order for them to get to where they were going. So this first one really is talking about how you as the interviewer, how you as the business owner or entrepreneur can just really need to stop looking for warm bodies and start recruiting future co-owners of your business. So one of the first things that I had to look at was my job postings. Whether you're going out with a third-party organization or you're posting it out on your website, what are you asking for? What are you really, asking for, but what do you need? I've ran into organizations, I've worked with businesses that have 5-year-old job descriptions, 10-year-old, some of them. Some of the things that are on these job descriptions, they don't even apply anymore. Some of the systems, the technology, maybe outdated processes. So really take a hard look at what you're asking for in the job description. It's important for us. And examples here, we want to make sure that we're emphasizing autonomy and we're emphasizing really this impact that we're looking for individuals to bring to our organizations. So for me, listing things out like process invoices, experience in Excel, those things really just identify a skill set. What I'm looking for in a co-owner of my business is for them to own the process, for them to own an end-to-end, maybe financial system process, right? That basically tells the individual, hey, I got to understand the entire process, not just how to process an invoice or collect payment, whatever that looks like. So it starts in the job description. Get into your job descriptions, see exactly what you are asking for. Are you just asking tasks? Are you requiring tasks? Or are you asking for people to bring that ownership mindset? Another thing that I always like to do here is during the application process, I always like to have a question on the application that brings me some type of mindset that when the applicant sits down and they apply, it's not just to check the box. Are you a U.S. citizen? Do you have an education, a bachelor's degree in these areas? Do you have these types of certifications? What I'm talking about here is I want a real world kind of case study, almost example of, I want them to draft one of my current pain points. So again, this is keeping it relevant, keeping it real. If you got a bottleneck in your organization, it's an IT system or it's a manufacturing bottleneck, whatever that is, and it's a pain point for you right now, I want to bring in somebody with that experience that can critically think through. One of my main really goals of a leader is to develop critical thinkers. I just don't want doers. I don't want somebody that I can hand a checklist to and then they follow the checklist. I want somebody to come in and problem solve. So take a pain point in your business right now, develop a question on it in your application, and then vet people, filter people through based on how they answer that application. These applications will help you redefine your hiring mindset. So again, make sure that you're taking a hard look at those job descriptions and then putting in a question on the application that allows you to get some insight into how people are going to critically think and people are going to problem solve. The second one we're going to talk about is assessing these ownership traits. So if I'm out there, I got a job announcement out, I'm looking for a position to fill, and I want somebody with an ownership mindset. Ownership is not just a buzzword. It is a behavioral characteristic. People, and you probably have recognized this in your business, who are your top performers out there? Who are the people within your organization right now that have that ownership mindset? How do they talk? What do they do on a day-to-day basis? Do they just come in, clock in, do the bare minimum and clock out? No, they don't. So what are some things, and I would even pull them in to say, all right, if you were to apply for your job, what are some questions that you would ask? That's a great way, because we're going to talk about asking behavioral type questions. And here we're going to give them a situation. Tell me about a time when you experienced X. Tell me about a time when you went through a difficult situation, a challenge, maybe a conflict, something around a situation that you are going to experience in your business. And then you're simply going to ask them, how did you handle it? Maybe what steps did they go through to fix it? It's going to allow them to process a situation that they've experienced before, because again, these ownership traits are behavioral. So you are going to be able to clue in and listen to how behaviorally they walk through that process. And if they have that ownership mindset, you're going to be able to tell that. Try it on. I want to take a quick break from the episode today to talk about a couple things. The first thing, less than 40% of our listeners are subscribed to our channel. You would be doing me a huge favor if you click on that subscribe button. It helps us grow our Go Be Great community and get this podcast out to as many people as we possibly can. The second thing, are you a small business owner that is drowning in the day-to-day operations? You're delegating tasks and you're still doing all the work. You're experiencing a high turnover. Maybe you don't have the systems and processes in place that you need to run a successful business. I invite you to go over to thejohnespinosa.com, fill out the form to see if you're the right fit. Now back to the episode. Another great way, an application that I like to assess ownership traits, is this mock scenario. So I will come up with a case study. If you're in customer service, maybe you have an unhappy customer. They call in, they purchased a product, it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, it wasn't their expectations. Ask the applicant how they would deal with it in the interview. How would they deal with happy customer calling? What are the first 3 things that they would do? Walk me through that. This allows you, again, to get into their minds and assess whether they have this ownership characteristic. It is powerful to understand how just a simple question, it starts with the job description, and then it gets into, a question on the application, but now we're talking about they are in front of you, or they're, in a virtual environment or in person. What can you do to assess that ownership trait? It's behavioral. Ask these behavioral questions, come up with a case study that's pretty common in your organization, on your team, in your company, and allow the applicant to answer that. The third one here is empower and reward ownership culture. So now we vetted them. They're on board. Hiring is just half the battle. I always run into people that I thought I was there earlier when I would hire what I thought was the best qualified applicant. They were the smartest. They brought the most certifications. Well, then they came into the culture, and what happened? My way or the highway. They didn't integrate in the culture. I almost lean more towards, is this person the right fit in the culture that I have established in my business and on my team? Then are they the smartest, right? Now, one, I'm going to do the fit test with the behavioral and the ownership mindset, but then I'm going to look at the cultural piece. What is their background? What are their previous employment opportunities? So one thing here is once you get them on board and you begin to onboard them, Gary Vee talks about this, you hire fast and fire faster. You're going to be able to tell within that first 90 days whether they're going to be a cultural fit within your organization. One of the ways that I like to accomplish this is decision making. Decision making is the slowest part of our businesses. And if you, the business owner, you, the leader, makes all the decisions, you're the bottleneck. So you got to give that power up. You got to give that decision making authority up. However, what you don't give up and what you provide those individuals is a decision making framework. So within that framework, it could be a dollar amount, right? If it exceeds a certain dollar amount, that's when you have to step in as the business owner and the leader. Maybe it's something along the lines of processes and systems. How far can you get outside of that system or that process that you have in place? Those are the guidelines, those guardrails that you're going to set, and then you're going to empower those individuals to start making decisions. Because hopefully they have exhibited those during the behavioral questions. You've given them a scenario and they've worked you through their decision-making process. So they can stay within the guardrails. Now you just give them the guardrails and then see how well they do. And another important piece here when I talk about empowering and rewarding this ownership culture is you got to look at what you're rewarding. Are your rewards tied to hours or are they tied to outcomes? The culture nowadays is I can get done whatever you've asked me to do, a report, a deliverable in whatever amount of time. I almost equate this to going to the dentist. When you go to the dentist, do you want to sit in the chair for 30 minutes while they work on your mouth and in your teeth or, whatever you're there to see them for? Or do you want to be in the chair for 3 hours and get your money's worth? I'll be the first one to say shorter is better. So that goes back to you got to tie your reward not to the hours that you're sitting in that chair, but the outcome. The outcome is they fixed my problem in the shortest amount of time. I'm happy. It was a favorable result, a favorable outcome. And now I'm going to go back because that experience was good. So that is no different than what you want to create in your organization, on your team, is tie those rewards to the outcome, the quality of the deliverable, the timeliness. Where are people gaining efficiencies within your organization in time and in revenue? That is going to create a culture where people feel a sense of ownership, because now, no matter how long it takes them or how short it takes them, you're getting the value in your company, in your team. So hiring, it doesn't have to be that big rock that you're consistently pushing up the hill. Onboarding is very costly, but these techniques are going to help you get a qualified candidate that has an ownership mindset. And just by, one, redefining your hiring mindset, looking at those job descriptions, seeing where you can create a case study within the application to allow that first kind of initial vetting. And then once you bring them into the interview, assessing those ownership traits by asking behavioral questions and then creating a mock scenario around a current pain point that you have in your organization, and have the applicant, the candidate, walk you through how they would solve that. And last but not least, once you get them on board, now you have that 90 days to really empower them and reward that ownership culture to see how well they do. Are they a right fit for your business? And if they're not, find them another place. That's the most difficult thing to do, but it is the right thing for your team and your business. I believe in you. I know that you can get the job done and create that ownership mindset within your organizations. You're going to see a big benefit as a business owner and as a leader within your organization. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.